So it has been an incredibly full, it is still an incredibly full weekend. So on Friday, I was at a wedding rehearsal for one of our members, Emery Keffer, who was married yesterday. Some of you know Emery has been part of our church since she was in the 3rd grade. So I was officiating her wedding, but we had the wedding rehearsal on Friday morning in Fallbrook, quite a little bit of a drive. And then there was going to be the rehearsal dinner with 93 people at the rehearsal dinner on Friday evening. This was a big, big wedding. So I knew it was going to be a full day, and I knew I had church, and I knew I had the wedding on Saturday, and I know I had the concert today. Breathe. So I get home from the rehearsal on Friday morning, and I'm sharing this in part because sometimes it's easy to look at the people that you see on stage and think, oh, well, their life is so easy. And that's not necessarily true. So I get home on Friday from the rehearsal, going to take a little bit of a break before getting back for the dinner later on with John and Jennifer, and I walk down my hallway. And you do not ever want to see water down your hallway. And I walk to where the water is, and it is in the room that we've given to my mother. She's not with us right now. And in her bathroom, and my feet are stepping on sopping wet carpet. Do you know how heavy shag carpet, just like an 8x10 gets with water? John was in the restroom. I come running to the restroom to him to say, we've got an emergency. We've got water coming down the hallway. You've got to get out right now. Poor guy is jumping out of the bathroom, running to turn the main of the water off, and comes in. And then we spent the rest of the day waiting for ServPro to come, and with a great big wet vacs. 3 huge containers of nothing but water, moving a bed. Anyway, I just want to breathe and be here with you. And then because it was Emery, I don't do very many weddings anymore. And when I do, I don't typically stay for the dinner and all of the beautiful festivities, because usually weddings are on Saturdays, and I protect my Saturday time so I can be at my best for you. We did not get home until 10 o'clock, which is really late for somebody who usually goes to bed at like 8 or 9 o'clock, so I can be up at 4, and then we lost that hour. So hold me in prayer that I make sense for you this morning as I breathe. And in fact, when I was doing the wedding for Emery and Kevin, you know, when a wedding is so big and so beautiful and so looked forward to and so many beautiful moving parts, one of the things in all my years of doing weddings that I've learned is that when the couple finally come to me and I get to be with them, all I care about, I don't care about the flowers, I don't care about the cake, I don't care about anything but the two of them and helping them to breathe, to be present and not miss that moment. And this series that I've started with you that really is in response to some questions I asked you a couple of months ago. I asked you what's kind of heavy on your heart as we're looking at what's going on in our world today. And I gave you several choices, and the 2 choices that got the greatest response, 30% for each of these choices, were peace in a chaotic world and living with presence in a changing world. And whether it is talking about the world, the big world, and the things that are going on in Iran, the things that are going on all around the world that can frighten us or sadden us or worry us, or whether it is a flood in our house and challenges with work or our health or finances, our teachings can help us be able to move through those experiences with a greater sense of peace and a greater sense of understanding. It's not that we separate out from the world, it's that we learn how to engage with it better. Does that make sense? We learn how to live with presence in a changing world. To live with presence. Say those words with me. To live with presence. Think for a moment about something personal for you that you're dealing with, that maybe feels heavy or feels sad or difficult. Keep that in mind as you hold those words, that thought, to live with presence in that, whatever that is, to live in presence with that. I entitled the lesson for today, The Soul's Firewall. An interesting title, huh? The Soul's Firewall. How many of you have a firewall on your computer? Maybe you don't even know that you have a firewall. I bet you have a firewall on your computer. And I bet you got it installed. If you didn't have it installed right away, you got it installed the first time you got a whole bunch of malware and stuff going on, and your computer system went wonky and you had challenges with it. A firewall is meant to protect a device, our phones or our computers, when they connect to a global network. And the reason that the firewall is so important is without it, that device is vulnerable. Without it, that device is vulnerable for the bad guys, so to speak, to get in, and for the junk data to clog down the system. And so people who rely on their computers, their devices, their technology to do their work appreciate the importance of having a secure system, the importance of having a firewall in that system. And yet, one of the areas that is so important for us, I'm using firewall as a metaphor here. One of the areas that's so important for us to have a firewall is around the soul. We leave the soul too open to the influence and impact of things that are not lifting it up, but can drag it down. Think for a moment, think about it this way, that your soul is like a network. It's constantly receiving data from the people that you talk to, the things that you watch, the things that you listen, the thoughts that you dwell on. And just like a computer, if your soul doesn't have a firewall, you're likely to get the malware of anxiety or the viruses of comparison or the spam of junk mail that clogs the system, that keeps you from being who and what you really are. Who and what you really are. So this morning is about that internal security, that those things we can put in place so that we have a layer of insulation, if you will, the soul's firewall, if you will, that we can guard what we allow to come in and stay in, and we can watch what we allow to come out. And we do this not to shut out the world. We do it so that we can be an inspiration to the world. We do it so that our best selves can come forward in whatever circumstances that we're facing, so that we can be that presence in a changing and chaotic world, to be that presence in changing and chaotic circumstances in our lives. So it's not that we're wanting to disengage, we're wanting to find the most effective ways to engage. You with me with that? Think for a moment, and it's so funny that I had this in my lesson well before our divine appointment with water in my house right now, and I was talking about ships in a harbor. And I was talking about how it is so important. I mean, a ship's usefulness, when you think about a ship in a harbor, the ship's usefulness is when it's in the water, right? Right? That's when it becomes useful. But it does not become useful when you flip it the other way around when the water is in the ship. That becomes what? A problem. God has a sense of humor in my life. I mean, to be talking about water in a ship with 2 dehumidifiers going on in my house and about 7 or 8 major commercial fans sucking the water out and blowing fuel. God has a sense of humor. This stuff works when we work it. When we remember what the principles are, what the teaching is. We can't control everything that happens out here. But we can control, or if you prefer the word, learn to better master how we interact with what goes on out here. Doesn't mean that we have to like what's going on, whether it's happening in our lives personally or happening in the world. Do you like everything that's happening in your life personally? No, I bet there are some things that you would like to have be a little bit different. Do you like everything that's happening in the world right now? Some of you might say, hell no. Right? We feel really strongly, no. And yet, what we can master is how we choose to engage with it, how we practice being the presence in the midst of changing times and circumstances. So when we think of a ship in a harbor, its usefulness is when it's surrounded by the water, not when the water's inside of it. And when the ship is safe in the harbor, it's often safe in the harbor because there is a seawall that is protecting the ship from the crashing waves that might be hitting it. So here we have another metaphor, if you will, of the importance of the right kind of barrier, the right kind of insulation between us and the world. And I want to take a side note here, because you also heard me say, if you were here last Sunday, that we don't want to build a wall around our heart. And you might be thinking, well, now, last Sunday she said don't build a wall around the heart. Now she's talking about a firewall. They're not the same thing. They're not the same thing. When we're building a wall around our heart, it's usually because we're shutting down. When I'm using this metaphor of a firewall, it's meant to help us be the guardian of what is going out and what is coming in. Do you sense the difference between the two? And that's really, really important. Perhaps even better than the metaphor of the firewall is the metaphor of the seawall that is just trying to keep the ship safe from crashing waves. I think of Jesus talking about the idea of being in the world, but not of the world. Of talking about coming apart a while, he said to his disciples, that there is a time to step back, a time to have that firewall or that seawall, if you will. With this idea of the water coming crashing in to the harbor, jeopardizing or putting the ship in harm's way, in danger, for us, that crashing waves can be the news that we are hearing in the world. It can be the news that the doctor gave us. This can be something our child has said to us, or something we look at in terms of our finances, and it feels like the world is crashing in on us. When the seawall is down, when the firewall is down, what happens is the water starts to leak in. And when water leaks into a ship, what happens? It sinks. It becomes heavy. It becomes weighted down. And I think sometimes we can feel that way as well, right? Can feel weighted down. So I want to share with you 3 ways of creating this sense of a firewall for the soul so that we can live with presence in the midst of whatever is going on. So the first of these 3 elements is the idea of an input filter. Say that with me. Input filter. And the way I'm using it now is that the input filter is a deliberate look at how we use the devices that we have in terms of what we're allowing to come in. guarding our eyes and guarding our ears. What is it that we are allowing ourselves to be subjected to? And have we gone to the extreme of allowing too much in to where we are like that ship that is now being filled with water and weighted down so it's of no good to anyone, really? It is that delicate balance, I think. I am not a metaphysician or a spiritual teacher that says disengage from the world and don't pay any attention to what's going on. I believe conscious people have to pay attention, very much so. And in order for us to remain conscious and remain helpful and remain part of a healing, not only do we have to be conscious, but we have to be deliberate in finding that balance for ourselves. And it can be as simple as looking at the habits that we have with how we use our devices. How much time are we spending on them? How much interference do we have with them? How much are they sucking the peace and the joy from us? When I was getting ready to lead the group to go down the aisle for the wedding, the coordinator for the wedding pulled me aside and said, before you go out, before we let anybody else go out, you need to go out first and you need to tell everybody to turn their cell phones off. And I thought I was glad that she said that, but I also thought it shouldn't be necessary. We're at a wedding. We should be fully present. We should have I'm shitting on myself and everybody. But I wish we were living in a world where we were that mindful that when we come together, especially at those important times and gatherings, that we are present enough to put those things away and silence them so we can be fully engaged and supportive of what's going on. And so, the very first announcement was, please make sure your cell phones are off. And what was funny is the tech person, Eduardo, you should have been the tech person, had forgotten to turn my mic on until like half of that announcement was over. It's not about being anti-tech. Those of you who know me know I have plenty of devices and I use them to do the work that I do, but I try to be master over them. And sometimes I do that better than others. When we set a digital curfew, or we turn off our notifications, or we keep our phones not on our nightstand but in a completely other room, we are sending a message to ourselves, I believe. We are sending a message to ourselves, and we're sending a message to the universe. I think the message we are sending is, I am safeguarding my peace. I am not going to allow myself to be interrupted from the influences or the activities of the outer world. Does that make sense? If we are really going to empower ourselves to be the best beneficial presence we can be in the world, we have to find the right balance for ourselves of what it is that we take in and what we allow to stay in. The second element is the idea of the output. So first was the idea of the input, watching what we're allowing, what we see, what we're taking in with our eyes, what we're taking in with our ears. The second has to do with the output, and specifically our language. Have you noticed how it seems that in our digital age, that in some ways we have lost quite a bit of our civility with one another? How people can show up with their darkest elements of their personality when they're doing it digitally. People that would not think of, or at least would have some sort of filter and not do that in a normal in-person interaction. I remember the very first time I heard this teaching was many, many years ago, and it stays with me because it's so simple, and it's, to me, so profound and so wise. And it has to do with this idea of our language, how we interact with one another, whether it is the words we speak or the words we write. And it was this simple practice. Before you say anything, ask yourself first, is it true? And just hang with that for a moment. Before you say anything, ask yourself, is it true? Before you say anything, after you've asked yourself, is it true, and you've gotten a yes, it is true, ask yourself, is it kind? Is it kind? And if you get a yes to it is true, and you get a yes to it is kind, the third question you ask yourself is it necessary? Is it kind? Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And the practice being, unless you get a yes for all three of those, it doesn't need to be said, or it ought not to be said. It could be a really quiet world, couldn't it? If we all did that. If we all did that. That is a true way of practicing how we show up in relationship. Is it true? Is what I'm about to say true? Am I repeating a story? Am I gossiping? Am I repeating something I haven't really researched to know whether it's accurate? Is it true? Is it kind? Our kids often correct me if I talk about, or if I say, we hope for you that you find a nice young man or a nice young woman. And both Jonathan and Jennifer say, Mom, you know better than that. Anybody can be nice. Kind is a very different thing. Kind is a very different. How many of us in this room were brought up to be nice? Yeah. And I hope we were also brought up, because if I had to pick one or the other, kind. Nice can be fake, right? Social niceties can be fake. Kindness has depth to it. Kindness comes from character. Kindness comes from compassion. So living with presence in a chaotic world, sometimes one of the first things that goes when we're feeling stressed or tired or pulled in too many directions or afraid or sad because of what's going on in the world, sometimes what goes is our compassion and kindness to one another. Because those qualities take some time and effort, do they not? They take mindfulness. They take safeguarding or being the gatekeeper of what it is we are about to say. I just had a vision cross my mind. So that we had a family member long since passed who I'm sure every family has a family member that is, how do I want to say it? I don't know how I want to say it. Is very unique and challenging sometimes in a very fun way. And so, I'm going to say her name. She wouldn't mind it. She's not here anyway anymore, not in the physical. But it was my great aunt Ilsa. All of like 4 feet, 10 inches tall, but like a fireball. And my aunt Ilsa was one of these that had no filters, none whatsoever. And so whatever she thought came right out of her mouth. Can you imagine? Anybody that's like that is going to wind up causing some very interesting dynamics in family relationships. And so the image that the family came up with was this, that as soon as she thought of anything, it came right out of her mouth. It wasn't something that nobody ever taught her to stop and ask, is it true? Is it kind? And most of the time she was truthful. And I think in her own way, she was kind. But I can tell you there was a lot of times it wasn't necessary. Right? Right? And so it's this monitoring that we learn to do. And we do it for ourselves. And we know that when we do it for ourselves, whatever growth we experience, whatever things we learn to do better, we are obviously the beneficiaries of that, but so too are all the people that interact with us. So too are all the people that interact with us. So whatever breakthroughs you've had in your life, whatever you've worked to become a better person, a more loving person, a more patient person, is not just beneficial for you. It's beneficial for all those who interact with you. And then the third element of this idea of the firewall or the seawall is what I'm calling our perimeter of defense, this idea of guarding our now moments, of guarding our now moments, of being present in this moment. A lot of times what happens is we have so much stuff coming in the mind, and we notice it perhaps most clearly when we sit down to meditate. What often happens to us when we sit down to meditate? Right. We call it, there's a name for it, right? It's called the monkey mind. Have you ever felt so frazzled or so overwhelmed that you almost felt like you were stuck? Anybody ever have that experience? You felt like you were almost stuck? You know, I learned about a term in the computer world that fits here. It's called a DDoS attack. John Atkinson, if you're online, you'll be proud of me. A DDoS attack. It means distributed denial of service. What that means in the computer world, it's when a system gets flooded with so many tiny requests that it just crashes. Have you ever felt like your system, your life, has got filled with so many requests that it just crashes? Right? That can happen to us as well when we don't practice being mindfully present right here, right now. Because a lot of the stuff that comes in that is clogging the system are those things like, well, what if he does that? What if this doesn't happen? What should I have done back then? Oh dear, what's going to happen if this happens to the stock market next week? Are you with me? It's all that stuff that's bombarding our spirit, our soul, that is very much like all the garbage stuff that can come in this DDoS attack that literally crashes the computer system. I think there's an analogy there for us as well. And the answer to that, to me, is the mindful practice of being here now. Being here now. Being here now. So as I close, thought I'd give you a little bit of homework, if you want to do it. And it's this idea of reflecting on your own experiences and doing what we might call an inner security audit. An inner security audit. Where is your firewall or your seawall weak? Where does it need to be strengthened up a bit? Is your firewall, your seawall, weak when you get tired? Is it weak when you get hungry? Is it weakened in the late hours of the day? Or when you're with a certain group of people? Or when you're bored and you don't know what else to do? And that firewall gets weakened, and the kinds of input that comes in and the kinds of content that goes out is not demonstrative of who you really are and how you really want to be in the world. I think each and every one of us can look inside and identify at least one change that we could make that would be beneficial. One change that would help us to protect our soul, if you will, so that we can be a steady, solid presence for good, no matter what the changing, chaotic circumstances might be. Namaste.